Hi everybody, welcome to Metal Planet. I am Max Gray. Today I'm gonna do a review of this release, which is a relatively new box set by the band Black Sabbath. It is called Anno Domini, 1989 to 1995. Anno Domini means in the year of our Lord in Latin. So what does this set contains? It contains 4 studio albums by the band, which are Headless Cross from 1989, Tear from 1990, Cross Purposes from 1994, and Forbidden from 1995. These albums are from the Tony Martin era of Black Sabbath. This era is a lesser-known era of the band compared to the Ozzy and Dio eras. It was a period of rebuilding for the band after many years of constant lineup changes. In the late 80s and early 90s, the band consolidated around Tony Iommi on guitar, Tony Martin on vocals, Cozy Powell on drums, and Geoff Nichols on keyboards. The Tony Martin era was, unfortunately, less popular in terms of album sales and concert attendance than the Ozzy and Dio eras of the band. But I feel that as time progresses, more and more people are now realizing that this era is underrated and that it produced good albums and good songs that are definitely worth checking out. For this box set, Headless Cross, Tear, and Cross Purposes have been remastered, while Forbidden has been remixed. I'm gonna talk a bit more about that later in this video. The 4 albums in this box set have been out of print for decades. They were hard to find as physical copies, and they were unavailable on streaming services as well. I can think of 2 reasons. Number 1, the albums were originally released on a label called IRS Records, which folded in the mid-90s. So the albums were in a sort of state of limbo. Number 2, Tony Iommi has been busy promoting the Ozzy and Dio eras of the band in the last decades, so I guess he didn't want at the time to re-release those albums to avoid confusing Sabbath fans with too many eras of the band at the same time. But now, we finally have the chance to get our hands on those albums. For this video, I'm mainly gonna talk about the CD version of the box set, but it is also available in the vinyl format. The albums have also been made available on streaming services as well. The box set was released by Warner Records in North America and by BMG in the other parts of the world. In the CD version, there is a bonus track that is included in every album except for the album Tear. Now I'm gonna talk about the things I think could have been done better for this set, and later I'm gonna talk about the things I really appreciate about it. The first disappointment about this release is that it doesn't contain all the albums from the Tony Martin era of Sabbath. The Eternal Idol and Cross Purposes Live are missing. According to Tony Martin himself, The Eternal Idol couldn't be included in the set because it was released by a different record label than the one who released the 4 albums in the box set. I find it weird because The Eternal Idol was released by Warner in North America, just like the box set, so why couldn't they include it here? Maybe it is because they couldn't include it in the BMG version, so that would make sense that they would leave the album out of the release. As for Cross Purposes Live, Tony Martin was told that it might get a standalone release in the future, so I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. A second thing I think could have been done better concerns the remix of Forbidden. Forbidden was always a black sheep in the band's discography. It originally suffered from a poor mix and a poor production, and many Sabbath fans didn't like it for that reason. For the remix, Tony Iommi and his team did a phenomenal job at improving the album's sound. I can say that the remix of Forbidden sounds like a legitimate Sabbath album, and that it is the best the album has ever sounded. The flip side to this is that the remix is now the only version of the album that is available, whether we are talking about physical media or streaming. I know that many people are gonna disagree with me, but my point of view is this. When bands release an album in a remix version, I think that the original mix should be available as well. Even if the remix sounds a lot better than the original, I think that people should have the chance to listen to the album in its original form and to make their own mind about which version they prefer. Don't get me wrong, I prefer the remix over the original, but I think that the original mix of the album in a remastered form should have been included as well. But considering that the band members involved in the making of the album and many fans don't like the original mix, I can understand why it is not included. My last complaint about the box set is that there are no new songs that are present. When Iommi discussed re-releasing the Tony Martin era albums a few years ago, he said that there was a chance that he and Martin record a few new songs to be included in the release, but as I understand, since the Ozzy camp took co-ownership of the Sabbath name, no new songs from the band can be released if Osbourne is not the one singing on them. So, I understand why Iommi couldn't include new songs for this set, like the ones that he recorded with Dio for the release of the Sabbath compilation, The Dio Years, in 2007. Now I'm gonna talk about the things I appreciate about the box set. The first thing is simply the availability. Headless Cross, Tear, Cross Purposes, and Forbidden have been unavailable for so long, we are talking about decades. So it is great that we can purchase and listen to those albums now. It's nice that it is available on CD, vinyl, and on streaming services, so people have different options. I also appreciate the quality of the music. The 4 albums have been underrated in the past. Headless Cross is one of Sabbath's best studio albums ever, regardless of who is singing. Tear is a pretty solid album in its own right, and I think that Cross Purposes and the remix of Forbidden are quite enjoyable too. Another thing I like about the release is the sound quality. The versions included here are the best the 4 albums have ever sounded. It is not only the remix of Forbidden that sounds good, the other 3 albums too. The Headless Cross remaster is definitely an improvement over the original. For Tear and Cross Purposes, the remasters are also an improvement, but it is a little bit less noticeable since the originals had a relatively good sound from the beginning. Finally, another thing I like about the box set is that they included some goodies. The things that are included are a nice booklet with liner notes, artwork and photos, a replica concert book from the Headless Cross tour, and a Headless Cross poster. For us collectors, it is nice that those goodies are included in the box. So what are my final thoughts? If you are an open-minded Sabbath fan, a fan that accepts that Ozzy has not always been the band's singer, I encourage you to get this set. If you have never listened to the Tony Martin era albums, this is your occasion to discover the material for the first time. If you are already familiar with the albums, this is a chance to rediscover them with an improved sound. I hope that this box set is gonna reposition the Tony Martin era of Sabbath as a legitimate Black Sabbath era. I actually think that it has already started. From the different reviews and comments I have read about the release, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Many people have embraced the remix of Forbidden, and it seems that many are discovering that the Tony Martin albums have been underrated in the past. I also hope that the interest for this box set is gonna make people want to discover or rediscover the other lesser-known eras of Sabbath, which are the Ian Gillan and Glenn Hughes eras. It would be great if more re-releases of the Tony Martin era would come out in the future. It could be nice if Warner and BMG released the 4 albums separately. It could be in the form of deluxe expanded editions with more bonus tracks like live cuts, for example. It would definitely be interesting if Iommi and Martin collaborate again in the future. I know that it couldn't be under the Black Sabbath name for contractual reasons, but I read recently that Iommi is working on a new solo album. It would be great if Martin sang on a couple of songs on this upcoming release. Lastly, since the Forbidden remix has been embraced, maybe Iommi could remix another Sabbath album with a poor mix in the future. I'm talking about Born Again. Ultimately, I think that the poor sound of this album contributes positively in some way to the eerie feeling of the material, but it would be a treat nevertheless to hear the album with an improved sound. So that's it for today. Let me know in the comments, are you planning on buying the box set? Have you bought it already? What are your thoughts on the Tony Martin era of Sabbath? And would you like it if Iommi and Martin collaborate again in the future? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.